13. Motion by Cardenas, second by Jackson. Please ballot. Item passes 5-0. Okay, item number 9, adopting a resolution 15-something, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro rejecting all bids and authorizing the re-advertisement of bids for the Adams Avenue Improvement Project. Mr. Hagan, can you speak to this item, and then we'll hear from Mr. Pipkin?
What had happened on this item when it went out to bid, the prevailing wage rates were not posted, and it's a requirement that this be done. And so that's why we're rebidding this project. And this is also at the recommendation of our city council. Our city attorney.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Clarification, that they're required to be posted where? As part of the bid documents, or it says bid procedures for federal aid projects require the posting?
I believe they're part of the bid documents.
Okay.
So they didn't get into the bid documents,
No.
I mean, just as a point of, not to be redundant, but that's what you're saying?
They were not included in the bid documents, so the new bid documents will have those.
Bids have been open, my goodness.
So, Ms. Becker, what would happen if the city was to proceed with the awarding of the contract with that deficiency in the bid documents?
Well, you could make the decision that that is an immaterial. You could waive the deficiency, but I wouldn't recommend that you do that because we've already received confirmation from the second lowest bidder that if we did award based on the bid package as it was submitted, that they would protest.
Well, the other question I would have is, if the federal prevailing wage determinations have gone up, then wouldn't we expect these bid amounts to change?
They could. The numbers could be higher or lower.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Chris, when you say the number 2, I'm assuming that would be Pyramid, would be wanting to protest, what would be the basis of the protest if all 3 had the same starting point? In essence, they all were, I don't know how to say it, they were all at the same advantage or disadvantage by not having it posted in the bid documents. So what would be their basis of the protest if they all had the same information to bid from?
I believe, in Mr. Campos, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe what they're saying is that by, we initially contacted, once we discovered what the concern was, that the rates had not been posted, we contacted all three of the bidders and asked and told them that we needed to post the rates and would that materially change their bid. And the response from the second bidder was, yes, it would materially change my bid. It would make it lower. I'd be the most responsible bidder. So you can't do this. You have to reject and go back out, is essentially what the second lowest bidder is telling the city.
Okay, let me go ahead and hear from Mr. Pipkin, and then we'll bring it back to council for additional questions. Mr. Pipkin?
Thank you. My name is Mark Pipkin. I'm an employee of Granite Construction. We were the low bidder on this project. We used due diligence, put together our bid, spent money and time to do that, adhered to all of the requirements that were in the bid package. These kind of projects are the lifeblood for Granite Construction here in Imperial County. We employ local people. We employ local people that are City of El Centro citizens, and they would be greatly disadvantaged should they lose this bid. I think that to say that the number 2 bidder would be able to lower his bid as a specious argument. Basically, if he were to adhere to the most recent prevailing wage rates, it would raise his bid, certainly not lower it. I think that's an incorrect argument. Also, within the bid package itself, they were advertised as a prevailing wage project, And those prevailing wage project dollars and rates are available to everyone on the internet. And the number 2 bidder could have accessed those as easily as Granite Construction did. And after the bids were open, we were contacted by the city and asked whether we would be able to adhere to the most recent prevailing wage rates, and we said certainly we would. It was in our bid all along. That was our assumption. To assume otherwise, again, I think is a specious argument. And the number 2 bidder is just using that as an opportunity to have a second bite at the apple now that the market has been established for this bid by the dollar value Granite submitted. And so I think it would be very disadvantageous to Granite, who did due diligence in coming up with a number, which was low among all the 3 bidders, to reject those and put it back out on the market and rebid that. Thank you.
So, thank you, sir. So if
I'm
I'm
sorry, I
understanding.
have a question for Mr. Pipkin.
Okay, let me just ask a question. So if I understand this correctly, we did, on the bid document, we did include that this would be a prevailing wage project. We just did not include the rates that would have been available for someone to look up on their own initiative. Is that correct?
Correct. The language was set up in the bid for the federal prevailing wages to be incorporated. There is a requirement, however, that 10 days before bid opening, any updates or modifications to the prevailing wages be posted and distributed to and available to the potential bidders. That's where we failed to update the bidders on the new wage rates. There were some wage rates that Mark is correct that wages go up, they don't go down. But it's a requirement that they be established, and so our documents also specify that needs to be provided to the bidders.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Walker?
I have a question, yeah.
So, Mr. Pipkin, when the proposal was put together by Granite Construction, how did Granite Construction go about determining the federal wage rates that would have to be paid under this, and how big a component of that is the overall cost?
Well, it is a substantial component of the labor costs of the project, and so it would be whatever the labor rates and the labor portion of this project. But those rates are available to anybody on the internet, the most recent ones. In the bid package, there were rates, there were prevailing wage rates, and apparently they weren't the most recent. And again, if you go back and look at the 2 rates, those rates do not go down. So if the most recent rates were in the bid package, it would certainly have not lowered the bid of number 2, which is, and as far as I'm concerned, this is a technicality in order to put this back on the street and for number 2 to get another bite at the apple.
I appreciate that. I have a follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Pipkin. Follow-up question for Mr. Campos. So, the information was provided in its initial form, and then those rates were modified, and we didn't go back out and tell the bidders, everybody, that, hey, this is now available,
Correct.
right? But I believe that Mr. Pipkin makes a very good argument that if the prevailing wage rates have gone up, intuitively that tells me that if we send this out for rebid, these are going to come back higher. And so for the second highest bidder to come in and say, well, we need to throw it all out because I would have done something differently, they would have been, I mean, intuitively, it tells me it would have been higher. So I guess the requirement, that's what I want to get to. What is the specific requirement? Because then that gets to materiality and whether or not we can waive that. And what is the specific requirement that says we have to provide that within 10 days?
I guess I would defer to legal. My understanding is there's law that needs to be provided by 10 days. I can't recall if it's law or practice on the 10 days, so that's we have to go back to.
I would have to look that up because I don't know that answer right now.
Is Granite's bid of 511,405, that's based on the latest prevailing wage table?
You don't know.
We asked what happened, just to recollect, as part of, when we open bids, we go back and also look at our practices and just to identify ahead of time any items that we missed. And before we award it, it's a bigger problem, and we identified that as an issue, and we wanted to bring it to your attention, what this happened during bid. I'm sorry.
So, because you said that you're required to provide people if the table changes within 10 days of the bid so they can evaluate their bid. And the rates did change.
Correct.
So is the 511,405, the lowest bid, is that based on the most current prevailing wage
So what
table?
happens, once we open the bids and identify the issue, we contacted the three bidders and said, hey, here's the latest wage determination. Is yours, just as a survey basically, is your price still accurate? And granted, they respond that their price does include the latest wage determinations.
Okay.
When did it change, though? Because it says that we approved the specifications on November 18th, and then you open bids like a month and 5 days later. So when did the rates change?
Early December.
See, Mr. Jackson, and then I'll come back to Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you.
Yeah, I always have issues with these type of situations because I live in a world of bids also in my business, and I don't like when a company, as Mr. Pipkin says, gets a second bite of the apple because of a technicality. I believe it certainly, it taints the process, in my opinion. I guess my question is, and I think I share the same feeling as Ms. Walker, is that if we're not bound legally, it seems to me that all three of these companies are all big boys. They certainly know.
Or girls. They might be big.
Or they could be girls, yes, I guess, ladies. It seems to me that, I know all three of these companies, they're not fly-by-night companies. They all know how to put together a bid. Seems to me they also understand the bid process, and it seems to me that they also understand that as Granite, they certainly can go on the internet and find whatever the updated numbers are. It also seems to me that they all know that within 10 days of the bid, there's a possibility that numbers fluctuate. It seems to me in this situation, whether or not the second bidder did their due diligence to do that, at the very least, Granite did. And I'm not sure that I would feel comfortable penalizing them for that. You contacted them, they said they could still do it under the same price. I also understand that if the prices go up, I don't understand how the number two bid could say that their price would fluctuate down based on the new numbers. So I think that that's just a fraudulent statement. I mean, I don't see how you can lower the price if the prevailing wage rates go up. So I guess I would feel comfortable if legal can tell us that this is something that we're able to waive. I would feel that way.
Recommendation? I think that given the agenda for this evening, I think we do need to make a determination, but I think that let's give Ms. Becker maybe another few minutes.
I actually just found something.
Let me,
Okay, hold on, before you go there, let me get Mr. Cardenas, and then.
No,
come back to
I'm
Ms.
in
Sanders.
agreement with Councilmember Walker and Councilmember Jackson. I do believe, there's some valid concerns, and I would want to understand more of the merits of the protest, and what are those merits of the protest, and
Yes.
and can this uphold the protest, and it's a very difficult process when you're dealing with sealed bids and so on and so forth. But basically, he showed his hand, and now we're potentially going to put it out to bid on a potential mistake on our part.
So, Ms. Becker, do you feel you've had sufficient time to research this? Because this is really a big deal, and I think that there's certain parts of the agenda that we can get through to allow you additional time to look, unless you've got a definitive answer for us now.
Yes, the Davis-Bacon Act is what requires the the posting of the wage determination. So 29 CFR 1.6 sub C3 I says a contracting agency is responsible for incorporating the applicable wage rate determination into each federally assisted contract entered into pursuant to competitive bidding procedures. When a notice of change to a wage determination is published in the Federal Register 10 days or more before the opening of bids, the United States Department of Labor requires that the new wage determination be incorporated into the contract by amendment. When a contracting agency has failed to incorporate a wage determination in a covered contract, what can the contracting agency do? Either terminate and resolicit the contract with a valid wage determination, or incorporate a valid wage determination retroactive to the beginning of construction through a supplemental agreement or through a change order, and the contractor must be compensated for any increases in wages resulting from such contract change. And that's 29 CFR 1.6 sub F.
But what that sounds like to me, Ms. Becker, is that we could go forward with awarding the bid, and then to the extent that prevailing wage rates have been increased, we amend the contract to provide for the payment of the increase in wages. I don't read that as a restriction that we necessarily had to modify our RFP process. To me, that sounds like more of a post-contract awarding.
Yeah, I agree.
Sounds like we can do an amendment. That's what it sounds like to me.
It says you can incorporate a valid wage determination retroactive to the beginning of construction through supplemental agreement or through change order.
See, I'm wondering if that particular provision, and again, that's why we want to make sure that you have enough time to research this, because I think, again, that particular section has to do with a post-award, post-contract signing. I'm really much more concerned with the statement here that says bid procedures require us before the opening of the bid. Where do we find the discussion about the opening of the bid versus the awarding of the contract?
Or maybe, if I may, Councilman, did they ask for legal counsel on this, Chris, prior to putting it on the agenda and providing this backup?
I'm
Or
sorry.
is this the verbiage that you gave them to put on the backup here, this language here?
On the staff report? No, I didn't have anything to do with writing the staff report.
But I
Chris.
think, okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Anderson, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It appears to me that this language that we see in the bottom of the page in
Right.
our backup material, with that one sentence, the federal prevailing wage determination 10 days prior to opening the bid. Okay, staff has said, from the Public Works Engineering Department, has said that was not there. They talked to the individual from Granite Construction, and he says this included this this bid included the prevailing wage. Now we go over and ask Ms. Becker. Ms. Becker has led us to believe that based upon her most recent reading of the law, the Davis-Bacon law, which is prevailing wage
Right.
law, allows, in my mind anyway, from your comments, a window of opportunity, Ms. Walker, to move forward with this with an amendment or not a change order. Is that, am I understanding that correctly? Or will that jeopardize the project?
If I may,
Or will that taint the process?
I guess there's two items that you're looking at. If I listen to it correctly, first it talks about the actions to be done before award.
Yes,
And then
that's
it talks about the actions to be done
afterwards.
if we catch it after award,
Right.
to fix it. I think we're somewhere in between right now. That's, if we don't have a clear
So-
definition
and
right
that-
now.
So
I
we
wonder if
didn't
can
catch it
continue that
before.
item.
No, we did catch it before.
Okay, we caught it before, but
Oh,
we
before
didn't
award.
post it.
Correct.
Okay, so it might as well not been caught because we didn't post it. Now we're looking at a way, no offense, Mr. Campos. Now we're looking at a way to try and fix it after the fact. And that fix could be done with a change order. Now, will that in any way, on the minds of those 5 of us here at the diocese, plus who's at the podium, and then our city attorney, will that in any way taint the process or jeopardize the process?
No, but that should be coming from our city attorney. We should be asking for the legal authority on this.
Well, that's.
And
that's
Ms.
what-
Walker clearly said if she needs more time
Okay, well-
to review it, then I think that's what we're giving her.
Mr. Cardenas, thank you very much for that reminder. That question was directed to our city attorney, Ms. Becker.
Thank you.
And Chris, to me, this is a very important issue. and obviously something, one that can have ramifications beyond tonight. If you feel comfortable making that opinion now, or you feel like you need time, or maybe even a continuance of this item until the next council meeting so that you are able to very definitively tell us, you know, where we are,
That would be fine.
I would be open to the idea of tabling this for the next council meeting if I have support from the council.
I have one question also. Abraham, when you discovered this issue, and who contacted the three companies?
I did.
And when you contacted the three companies, did you let them know where they placed in the process and what their bids were relative to the other bidders?
That's the public information. They show up at the time of the bid opening, and everybody knows their respective rankings and bid amounts.
So they were all there when the bids were
all
open?
aware. Yes.
Can we, in lieu of continuing this item, could we make can we make an award contingent upon the city attorney confirming council's interpretation that as long as the bid documents made reference to the fact that this was a federal prevailing wage project, and that there was otherwise no requirement that we had to go back and re-notify within that very short window of opportunity, can we do it that way? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if
Well,
that,
the requirement to post is in the Code of Federal Regulations. And then what it says
Right.
is if we did not timely issue the wage determination after contract award or at the beginning of construction.
But here's a question I have.
Make it
In
contingent
essence,
upon-
when you open the bid documents and you discover who the low bid is, haven't you, in theory, awarded the contract?
No.
I mean, you haven't signed the documents, but we base our bids on the low bid. So,
always,
it has to be done
because
here.
they may not be responsive, or they could be, you know, later
but no,
on they're
but
found to
aren't
be
they, aren't they
some kind of a
deemed
problem.
responsive when they open the first packets? Because remember, you have the pricing, and then you have the first packet, which is all the information that makes them either responsive or non-responsive. Is that correct, Abraham, Terry, somebody? So at that point, they were all three deemed responsive and eligible. So then at the next point, then the only thing that either, you know, gives them the award or doesn't is based on price. Would that be a fair assessment?
But I thought that we've had cases here.
But hold on, I want to hear what,
The bid opening is nothing else than the reading of prices.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they're responsive and responsible. That's a process that's evaluated by staff and.
aren't those done separately?
No, it says bid opening, and that's in that instant, 2 p.m. Thursdays pretty much for our city is we open bids and everybody's giving the bids are read out loud, the numbers, so anybody in the public can come in and listen to that. But after that, they're taken by staff to be reviewed, whether they turn on their documents, their insurance, their bonds. That's all reviewed, and there might be situations where they didn't submit the required documents,
Okay.
and they're automatically
So
tossed
you're
out.
not doing that
They're non-responsive.
beforehand, you're doing that after
Yes,
the
we-
pricing has been discovered?
Correct. It's
Okay.
bids are sealed and not open until that point.
And Ms. Becker, what is your recommendation at this point?
I think I would probably like to make sure that I have all of the law in front of me that I need to know. Because I need to read the Code of Federal Regulations.
Is there any consequences if we delay this 2 weeks?
No.
I like to ask the council that we table this matter for 2 weeks and get it
To the March 3rd meeting?
to the March 3rd meeting.
Move approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second,
Before
Oh,
continuance, you
I'm
mean?
sorry, I'm sorry.
well, you gotta give Diana time to, or somebody.
We appreciate your patience, Mr. Pipkin. Thank you, sir.
So is the motion, Ms. Sanders, for continuance?
Yes.
Yes.
Does it require a motion, an action, a vote?
Hold on,
Wait,
Diane, do you need to modify that, because it says reject and rebid?
No, we want to
I think you
continue.
can continue the item, there's no action, is that you just,
We're just,
It's
okay,
just continue, no motion required, okay.
Okay.
we have direction.
Okay, thank you much.
Okay, so Mr. Pipkin, 2 weeks. Thank you.
All righty, my time estimate of being out of here by 8 o'clock or just out the window?
Jeez Louise.
Is that a motion?
I told Steve I'd be home at 7:30, so come on now.
Okay, so let's, item number 14, public hearing, continuance of a public hearing to consider the recommendation of the Planning Commission on negative deck 1402, prepare for change of zone 1402, and general plan amendment 1402. Presentation by Ms. Villacaña.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. As you may recall, this public hearing is a continuance of a hearing that was held, that was open at your last meeting. The project before you is a change of zone and a general plan amendment. And I'm not going to go through the presentation unless you want me to do it again.
No, we heard it last time.
But after the meeting, following direction from the council, staff met with Mr. Bertucci, and then we reviewed the different uses under the general commercial and under the heavy commercial. Copies of the zoning classifications were provided to Mr. Bertucci, and he requested that he be allowed some time to go home and review all the documents. He did inform us that he would give us his decision at a later time. As of the writing of the staff report, we had not heard from Mr. Bertucci. However, Mr. Bertucci is here in the audience, and he would like to make a comment.
Okay. Before we do that, any additional comments from council?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing for items 14, 15, and 16, which they're all interrelated. So, Mr. Bertucci?
Thank you. Honorable Mayor and council members, good evening. My name is Giovanni Bertucci Jr., and I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Bertucci Family Trust, the property owner, and the matter being heard here today. I am also a licensed real estate broker specializing in commercial property matters for many years. I'm here today to speak to support the recommended changes zone and general plan amendment being heard here today. The Bertucci Family Trust believes the changes zone and general plan amendment being considered today should be approved for the following reasons, among others. Number one, based on my reading of the staff report, the city manager's recommendation is for the approval of the related resolutions for the changes zone and general plan amendment requested. Number two, the City Planning Commission has already recommended by a 6 in favor and 0 against. They voted to approve the related zone change, general plan amendment, and negative declaration prepared in conformance with CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. Number three, the change of zone is consistent with the current zoning of the 4 adjacent neighboring properties. Accordingly, not approving the requested zone change and instead suggesting the property be alternatively rezoned differently, for example, to commercial general, would be detrimental to the property owner for the following reasons among others. Reason A, zoning inconsistencies with neighboring properties would be financially detrimental to the property owner, limiting the owner's future desirability to purchase and combine neighboring properties, and also the potential to sell to neighboring property owners desiring properties with a similar zoning. Item B, an inconsistent proposed change of zoning, that is to commercial general, would also limit the future development potential of the property owner's property already available with its current zoning designation. Item C, the property owner has already incurred thousands of dollars and significant time on its current rezoning effort. Moreover, the proposed change of zone is consistent with neighboring properties and the surrounding area. Point 4, disapproval of the proposed property rezoning may also result in unanticipated consequences. It is common knowledge that when one lot within a zone is uniquely different from its neighboring parcels, for example, zoned differently from neighboring parcels, the parcel may suffer unduly from the unique zoning. In summary, the Bertucci Family Trust believes this proposed change of zone and general plan amendment will not adversely affect the public or surrounding properties. The Bertucci Family Trust also believes its property is special because of its location, surroundings, and other characteristics. Therefore, the Bertucci Family Trust believes it is in the best interest of both the property owner and the city to approve all related resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional comments from the public? If not, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Questions, comments from the council? Mr. Jackson?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess, Norma, I guess from Mr. Bertucci's statement, he is not willing to refile and look at general commercial. Is that
That's correct.
Okay. That's the only question. Thank you.
Comments? Question? I have to say that I'm still not convinced that heavy commercial is the best zone for that property. Given some of the uses that would be allowed under heavy commercial that I do think are incompatible with the city's intention for Imperial Avenue, recognizing that the properties on the north side of you are heavy commercial. I like to see consistency, and there's nothing we can do about the adjoining properties. We do have some jurisdiction over this one here. And for me, particularly, the size of the lot would allow for potentially allow for a use that, from my perspective, is not compatible with Imperial Avenue. But that's where I stand. And I'll get you in a minute. So let me see if there's additional council comments, and then I'll come back to you.
I'll make a comment.
Okay, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I believe I made my point pretty clear last time to Mr. Bertucci, or I'm sorry, to your father. I understand that you're not stating that you would open a auction house or a hatchery or any of these kind of odd things that are acceptable under heavy commercial. However, being that this is a major corridor to our city, I believe that it's our responsibility as elected officials to mold and frame where our city goes and how it's built out. And there are times where, and I can appreciate the recommendation of our city manager and our planning commission, but there are times where, and I was a planning commissioner at one time, and we made recommendations, and sometimes they were overturned by the council based on either further information that we didn't have or just a different look at the same information, knowing that as our community grows, certain things have to be changed with that. Yes, you're correct that we don't have the ability, and all the other areas right there are zoned heavy commercial. But I think it is the desire by, I don't want to speak for the entire council, but I believe it's the desire of this body to eventually get to a point where that entire area is changed to a more acceptable zoning that would allow for retail and would also not allow for such things as blacksmithing, horse and livestock auctions, pest control, those type of things, based on the fact that our city is moving and growing to the north and is becoming more of a retail area. So unfortunately, I would not be supporting this motion at this time.
Any additional comments from the council at this point in time?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, but there's no motion on the floor, is there?
Right,
No,
no.
but there will be.
Okay, there's,
I won't be supporting the notion of the application to zone the entire thing heavy commercial.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, because I am trying to understand what action is before us, but, and I have to agree with our council member, and not only with our mayor, but our mayor pro tem in terms of their comments, Mr. Bertucci, it is a very difficult situation, but we are thinking about the future. But in terms of action today, in the event that we did not approve this, what would that property then default to? And what would happen in the event that we did not approve that zoning here today?
The property, the zoning classification will remain the same, which
Okay.
would be heavy commercial, the half, and on the east would be residential.
No, I know he made, there's some expenditures in terms of CEQA, I believe a CEQA study or something that was done to that effect.
Yes.
And what happens to those costs that he has invested?
Well, actually, the application was submitted by Animal Health.
Okay.
So those costs were paid by the previous owner. And those are not reimbursable because that's staff time and cost and materials to get to this point. So it's not reimbursable.
So if we were not to allow the heavy commercial zoning, what expenditures are the Bertucci Trust, what expenditures are there out? Or what expenses are
I may have to defer to them because the original application was not submitted by by the Bertucci's. It was submitted by somebody else, so I'm not sure.
But I think none of the costs that were paid are reimbursable to anyone.
None of the costs,
Okay.
yeah.
And I think it's I'm sorry, Ms. Senator. I just want to say, I think it's an application or fees associated with an application do not guarantee a result of the applicant. So I think, and I certainly know Mr. Bertucci knows this, is just the fact that they submitted an application, of course, they didn't on this one, and paid fees. It doesn't guarantee them the result that they're looking for.
That's
So,
correct.
Okay, so let me get Ms. Sanders, if you have any questions, and
Yes,
then Ms. Walker, and then I'll come back to Mr. Bertucci.
okay, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for the opportunity. I have several observations and then a question and then perhaps a statement. The observations are that this was before us before, and certainly, I want to say Gio, but Bertucci's are aware of the sentiment of the council at that time. The question is for staff, and that is, while the fees have been paid and they're not reimbursable, is there any kind of flexibility as far as a timeline? For example, would this stay in place for a month, 2 months? I know we've asked him to come back and then look at this. How long is that a statute of limitations on that?
No, if the application, if the request is denied, basically it just goes back as it was.
It goes back as it was.
The Bertucci's can come back in a month, in a week, in a year, and reapply for
Additional fees.
with additional fees.
Additional fees.
One option that when I did meet with Mr. Bertucci, he was informed that because a lot of the work has been done already, a lot of the environmental review has been done, we just have to analyze it as general commercial if we were to go that route. And so I explained to Mr. Bertucci that the only cost that they would be responsible for if they decided to change this to general commercial would be for the publication cost to the newspaper. Because, again, we have a lot of that information, and we could just change that to general commercial.
And I think the struggle, at least that yours truly had during this time, is there is no identified project for the area, no identified project. Correct. And so therein lies, we look at all the potential uses, and that caused some concerns.
Now, that's a very good point, because it can be, the zone can be changed to heavy commercial, which it already is. So basically, the property owner can right now do anything that heavy commercial allows in that front piece, including buying neighboring properties, selling neighboring properties, is there to expand any heavy commercial activity in that area. Furthermore, all the other properties along that stretch are zoned heavy commercial already, and even though we understand the council's desire to at some time in the future change the zoning of the area, because of the businesses that are already there, it is totally impractical that that'll ever happen. And with that being said, forcing the Bertucci Family Trust to rezone his property as commercial general is totally separate, which would be a complete different zone from the 4 neighboring parcels next to him. I have the property profile reports.
Yeah, we have that.
If you read the real estate law.
We have that, Mr. Bertucci.
Okay, but my point is this. And in my presentation, I mentioned it may unduly damage the Bertucci Family Trust by not allowing it to have property rights it otherwise would have. And by requiring a change in zone to the commercial general option, thereby his basic, and Ms. Bickert can confirm this, but the Bertucci Family Trust, the way they would try to get equity if they felt damaged by that is only basically to go to court on. Whereas right now, the property is zoned heavy commercial in the front, consistent with other properties. The Bertucci Family Trust can do anything there. So I really, really, really highly recommend the council really take a look at what's there and reconsider your position, and instead try to place what goes in there in the future via business applications, whatnot, instead of zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me get Ms. Walker first, and then I'll come back to Mr. Jackson.
I think that anytime we're dealing with private property rights, it becomes what do we want to have happen, and when does government become intrusive into the private property rights? In this instance, I think during the last council meeting, we had hoped that the applicant would voluntarily consider the change to a general commercial versus heavy commercial. But excuse me. But
Last second, please.
yeah,
I'll come back to you. Later.
Right, and again, I think that we had hoped that maybe voluntarily the applicant would see that as a way forward. We can't impose on this site the general commercial zone. We can't do that. So we get nothing without the applicant's consent to move it forward. If we don't approve it, we continue to have that
Commercial.
the split of the zone, with the residential being behind and the heavy commercial in front. Market conditions are ultimately going to determine what happens with that site. Makes sense for us to allow for the contiguous parcels to be the same zone. So I think that absent the property owner's consent to move forward with the general commercial zone, I don't know that we can necessarily move in a different direction. Obviously, I mean, to Mr. Jackson's point, I wish there was a whole lot of things we could do in other areas of town. I mean, look at how much effort we've focused on downtown. And yet, private property rights, again, trump every single thing that we have tried to do to foster better development downtown, or more development downtown. So I really don't see, without the applicant's consent to move forward in a different direction, I don't see that we have a choice.
As I understand it, though, because the applicant is not in agreement to consider a different classification such as general commercial, that this item is going to be either approved or denied.
Yes.
Right.
If it's approved as a heavy commercial zone. If it's denied, the zoning as is now will remain. And that's the
Correct.
action that we're facing today.
Correct.
Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, Norma, can you walk me through something that happened a few years ago, and I'm having a hard time recalling how we did this and what the basis was. When we rezoned, we did the downtown commercial zone, and we took part of 4th Street. I believe we took the west side of 4th Street, and we changed that entire zone. What was the process that we did that, and what was it that allowed us to do that without, because there was different property owners involved with that. We didn't own all that property. How did that come about, and how does that affect something going forward? Like if we're looking at the same area on Imperial Avenue, could we not employ the same process to then say, we're going to move, because it's for the betterment of the city, we're going to move all that area from heavy commercial into a general commercial?
Going back to the downtown, that was accomplished through our comprehensive update back in 2007, 2008. And the process that we took was we notified all the property owners. This is what the city's proposing. We had a public hearing. We did not have any opposition from the property owners west of, from 4th to 8th. So the downtown, it was changed to downtown commercial. If we were to do that along Imperial Avenue, we would have to go through the same process, go through the environmental review, notify the property owners of the proposed change, and whether they're in favor, that's where it would.
And if a property owner is against that zone change proposed by the city, what then is the process? Does it kill the entire move to rezone, or is there a process that goes through, or is it much like an eminent domain where we decide that it's for the best of that area? I mean, how does that, what do we do?
I believe the final decision is made by council, so if maybe I should defer to the city attorney. Whenever you have a proposal, a general plan amendment, or any kind of request, you have the final decision.
But the downtown was a part of a greater, very overarching. It was a downtown revitalization. We had Fregonosi come in. We had multiple.
But what's to say what's to say that we're not looking at the same concept? We changed the downtown and parts of 4th Street because we had a future vision of our city. What's to say that we don't have that same vision of the north end of the city on the corridor, which is the major corridor into our city? My vision is not to see feed yards and livestock auctions and mattress repair yards on Imperial Avenue across from our retail centers. So if that's what the
I
will
think-
of this council is why shouldn't we look at that as a
I
possibility?
think the concern that you've addressed about the particular things that are allowed has been voiced at our previous hearing when Mr. Bertucci Senior was present. And that was the reason he's come back and brought his son with him at this point, to be, so they could do a tag team approach.
No, so we could inform you better of what the detriment
Okay.
could be to everyone.
All right.
But one of the things that Mr. Bertucci, you stated is incorrect. If we allow you to have the zone of heavy commercial, you said, then we can dictate to you what kind of business goes there by business license. That is incorrect as far as I,
You can work with the proposed developer through the planning commission and so forth on what ultimately gets to go in there.
I don't believe that's correct.
What I was also going to say is, I think your question that you're asking here about how the Imperial Avenue is different and the downtown is completely different because the property owners there have heavy commercial uses going on there already. They will definitely oppose it, and I believe what happens is it becomes, for those property owners opposing the measure, it becomes the potential for an inverse condemnation.
But I think
Well,
we
I disagree.
get back to the discussion that we had at the beginning of the meeting. The reason why the council has no jurisdiction over Planned Parenthood is because in the zoning where they are proposing to open, it's an allowable use, period. There is no discretion from the council as to whether a clinic should open in that facility. And so conceivably, the same thing can happen on your property whereby if a use that's allowed as a permitted use comes for a permit, there is no jurisdiction from this body to say yea or nay.
Already happen now, as the zone for it currently.
Yes. that is
Well,
cor-
on
that is
part of the
correct.
property, but by changing it to give you the entire piece, now it might be more viable to have a livestock auction house because now you've got a bigger property. I'm not comfortable. Sure, and I'm not comfortable, look, there is already zoning issues in that area. You've got a storage center that is on half of it's on heavy commercial and half of it's on R1. I mean, how that ever happened, I don't know, but it did. And I personally am not gonna be part of possibly allowing another misstep of a piece of property that we have the jurisdiction of trying to affect change in an area that I believe we want to affect change. Shouldn't we want the major corridor to our city not to be made up of a mishmash of heavy commercial type facilities? I believe we do. I will not be voting for this at all.
Okay, so I think we heard people's sentiments. Anything else, Mr. One final comment?
Thing is
Yes.
that the problem with the argument you just proposed of, so what are you guys gonna do? Let every commercial be done in the front and basically require the owner to put a residence in back? Currently, there's a bunch of homeless living in the back. We totally cleaned up the whole property on a lot. And to be in the best interest of the city and alleviate all these homelessness, graffiti, everything else, really is in the best interest to make the property one contiguous zone, not different from neighboring properties. Make it all heavy commercial is really the only thing that makes sense or will ever make sense.
I have one question. Mr. Bertuzzi, why are you so set on this heavy commercial? Why not go to a general?
For the reasons I just said, that whatever there is actually out of real estate case law. Let me say it again.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying, but I mean, do you have a use in mind that fits within the?
No, not at all, but we do, if you remember, going way back, well, you probably are too young, but over in Euclid Avenue, between Euclid and Adams, area, we used to have condemned buildings there, right along Adams Avenue. There were many, many homeless there. The buildings were condemned for years and years. My father was able to buy one piece first, the adjacent little tiny mobile home park. Then the two parcels over on Euclid that were zoned residential all the time, he got those rezoned as commercial general, built the first phase for Royal Palm Storage over there. Subsequently, we bought the property next on Adams Avenue, where all the condemned buildings were. I mean, they were the biggest pain for the city. There were bums out front that out there and drank, and I mean, they were going to the restroom. No, it was horrible. We ended up raising all those buildings, fencing off the related property, totally cleaning everything up. We have not built anything on the property since, although at one point before the economy crashed, we were looking at expanding our storage. Subsequently, we bought the last residential property there on Elmer Avenue. It was the property owned by Bimini.
Mr. Bertucci, can I kind of direct you back to this particular item?
Yeah, so basically what my point is that you know us, you know we do everything great, you know we clean up and all our facilities.
And Mr. Bertucci, you weren't here last meeting, but I commended your father in the fact that you had done that.
Okay.
I don't think that that's in question. I just believe that the fact is my point of view is that I don't want to move forward with what you're asking. I don't disagree that your family has done great things for the city of El Centro, and I told your father that last time we were here. So
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close. I'm gonna close the public hearing. I think we've heard enough testimony and sentiments from the council. There's 3 specific items that we need to vote on. The first item has to do with the adoption of the negative declaration 14.02. That's a negative declaration only that we will be voting on. So I need a mover and a second as it relates to the negative declaration only. So moved by Walker. Is there a second to that? Second by Cardenas. Again, Ms. Vicaña, just make sure that we know what we're voting on. This is only has to do with the adoption of the negative declaration, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Vote passes 4 yes and 1 no. Okay, as it relates to the adoption of the recommendation of the Planning Commission and General Plan Amendment 1402 that would change the designation to, or on the back end of the property from R1 to
heavy
commercial. That's, is there a mover to that effect? A move by Walker, second by Sanders, please ballot. Motion passes 3-2. Yes, Silva and Jackson, no. Okay. Item number 16 is a order, change of zone 1402, changing the entire property from heavy commercial / residential to all heavy commercial. Is there a motion to that effect? Moved by Walker. Is there a second to that?
Thought I didn't move fast enough.
Second by Sanders, please ballot. Okay, motion passes 3-2. Thank you, sir. All right. New business, item number 17, amendment to section 168 of chapter 10, article 5 of the city code establishing regulations related to fireworks. Presentation by Norma Villacaña.
Thank you. Good evening. As you may recall, last year was the first year that, as per our ordinance, that we allowed for the sale of fireworks within the city limits. At that time, as per the ordinance that was approved by the city council, 4 temporary use permits were issued to nonprofit organizations to sell fireworks during a designated time period from June to July, about 10 days or so. The feedback that we received back from those nonprofit organizations was very positive. However, one comment was made, or several comments were made, where to allow them to start selling the fireworks or open the stands earlier in the day because of the weather, because it gets so hot. Our current ordinance states that these stands shall be open from 12 to 10 p.m. We are proposing to revise the ordinance to include the opening of the stands from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And everything else would remain the same.
So people want to buy fireworks that early in the morning?
I guess it's too hot.
It's July.
I would think they'd want to go from 6 to
Comments on the
9.
question, Ms. Walker?
I think we move staff's recommendation. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's makes me. Any additional comments? So, motion to approval of ordinance 1502, amending section 168 of chapter 10, article 5 of the city code related to fireworks regulations, waive reading and approve as first reading. Motion by Jackson, second by Walker. Please ballot. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Item number 18, discussion and necessary action related to the proposals received for CDBG program for program year 2015-2016. Presentation by Marcela Piedra.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor. Here to present before you the summary of the proposals that we received as we opened up our request for proposal process for the Community Development Block Grant Program year starting July 1, 2015 and ending June 30th, 2016. As you may recall, prior to us starting the development of the annual action plan, which is a required document that we have to submit to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, we start off with an RFP process where we solicit proposals from different nonprofit agencies that are eligible to submit proposals, along with city departments that have any particular project or program they would like to submit a proposal for. As indicated in your city council report that you have before you, we received a total of 17 proposals that were submitted. As of the time of the preparation of the report, we were basing, which is typically what we do when we kick off the RFP process, is base the amount that we anticipate budgeting for the next program year based on the actual allocation we receive in the current year, which in our current program year, we actually received $539,684 from HUD. However, last week, we received our actual allocation amount, and the actual allocation we are receiving for the 2015-16 program year has actually been reduced to $501,991. So in comparison to what we initially projected to receive, which was our actual allocation for last year, we saw a reduction of approximately $38,000. So we did provide an updated summary sheet for you indicating that reduction, because that's in fact our actual allocation. And I also provided copies of the summary proposal review that I'm going to be presenting as I present the proposals to you. One of the, I guess the major points to remember as we are evaluating these proposals is that these proposals, projects that we consider for funding have to benefit or have to meet one of the 3 national objectives, which are to benefit at least 51% low and moderate income persons, and also or aid in the prevention or elimination of slum or blight, or have a particular urgency in the community. And so those are the guiding points as we look at these proposals. So at this time, I'll go ahead and proceed with starting the presentation. Turn this on. Okay, so here's the summary of the proposals that we receive, and what we try to do to hopefully guide you through this process is separate out the proposals based on what is being requested under public services, public facilities, infrastructure, housing. We also have code enforcement, and obviously program administration. So for the public services, we actually received proposals from, two proposals from Women Haven for transitional shelters, emergency shelter, to operate their emergency shelter. Also Catholic Charities seeking funds to continue the operation of their House of Hope. And also another proposal from Catholic Charities for the senior nutrition program that they offer and have been offering, as you're well aware. We also received another proposal from the Child Abuse Prevention Council, which they hope to continue doing the Road to Wisdom, parent education. And of course, the fair housing, which is a required activity that we consider under public services. We also received a proposal from the Sister Evelyn Murray Center, and also a proposal from the California Rural Legal Assistance. In this particular case, with this particular proposal, our application RFP process indicates that we cannot, that an agency that's requesting funds, and that's why you see the ineligible there, is they requested the $35,000 to be just go to personnel cost. We do have a requirement that we cannot fund more than 20%. So this proposal is requiring that, you know, they fund for salaries at $35,000, and so we deemed it ineligible, basically. The IV...
Excuse me, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Of course. Were they aware of that?
Yes, it's strict. It is indicated in the RFP that the maximum they can apply or request for is 20%. So that was clearly on the RFP forms. And we did have public workshops available, technical assistance for any agency that was interested in receiving that.
Thank you.
The Imperial Valley Regional Occupation Program submitted a proposal for their Leadership Asset Program, which is a new program they're launching. However, they did withdraw their request from the program, so that's not being considered. However, they notified us after we had put together the report to you. We also received a request from the El Centro Fire Department to offer a community and emergency response team program. And I do want to mention that we did inform these various applicants that we were doing this presentation before you, and many of them are here, obviously, to respond to any questions or speak on behalf of their proposals. Under the Public Facilities Infrastructure, we received from the Public Works Department a request to continue doing sidewalk improvements throughout our eligible areas. And this is a map showing, illustrating kind of the areas where we are proposing to do sidewalks, which in essence is basically around schools here in El Centro. Continuing on with the summary of the proposals, we also received a proposal from the Community Development Department to continue the basically code enforcement program that we have in the amount of $72,500. And we also submitted under the Economic Development Division monies to do housing activities. In December of 31st, we actually had our home grant expired, which is what we relied on to provide housing rehab. So the grant expired. The notice of funding availability for those funds doesn't come out until May. The applications are due in August, so we are requesting, and there's no guarantee that we would get that funding, so we are requesting at least to be able to have some funds to do some housing rehab projects. For the grant administration, that's under the Economic Development Department or Division, is basically to set aside funds to have staff continue, obviously, operating and administering this program, and that's in the amount of $100,398. Summarizing the funding available, and again, this is based on the actual amount that we are receiving for the 2015-16 year. And these are obviously the percentages that we are eligible based on, you know, the Code of Federal Regulations to maximum be able to use. Under grant administration, we're able to use up to 20% for grant administration purposes. So out of the $501,991 that's available to us, we can use up to $100,398. Under the public services, we can only expend 15% of those funds, which leaves us only $75,299. And as you recall, in public services, we are seeing requests of up to, more than $200,000. Other eligible projects, which would basically be, the funding of sidewalk improvements, code enforcement, housing, you can use those $326,000, 294 for those purposes. We also, as part of this program, we also receive program income funding, and we anticipate getting approximately $31,690 for this particular program year. The percentages that are allowed under the state currently is for grant administration, we can only use up to 17%. For public services is the same percentage, which is 15%. And for other eligible projects, basically you use the remaining funds, which is what we have calculated out here. So based on that $31,690 that we anticipate receiving, for grant administration, $5,387. For public services, $4,754, and then the rest of it could be used again for sidewalks or housing activities or code enforcement. So for this program year, we anticipate having available to us $533,681. The activities that basically, are required or we're recommending that we set aside funds for is for fair housing. That's a required activity, and again, it comes out from our public services pocket, and so it's $45,000 for that. For grant administration, we are suggesting that we basically set aside the full amount that we are eligible to receive, which is $105,785. So for total, for suggested activities, again, with one of them being required, we're suggesting we set aside $150,785 for these two activities. So in summarizing here, what we have available for public services from both the allocation that we get from HUD and from anticipated program income is we have $80,053 available. And under other eligible projects, we can set aside up to $347,843. And here, I know this looks like a really busy slide, but we try to separate out how we can break up the different funding of projects based upon the allocation and the state program income. Again, taking the CDBG allocation of $1,991, taking out the 20% for program administration, it leaves us available $401,593, with available for public services out of that allocation $75,299. And for other eligible projects, $326,294. And out of the program income, again, taking out the maximum allowed for public services and program administration, it leaves available for eligible projects $21,541. So in combining the two funding sources, we basically have available for public services $35,053. So what we have done is taken out the required for the $45,000 for fair housing. And the eligible projects is $347,843. So at this point, this concludes the presentation. So if there's any questions.
Any more good news, Marcel?
I wish I had good news. I wish that, our allocation would increase versus decrease.
So 10%, I'm sorry, Mr.
Go ahead, Mr. Sanchez.
We have available for us 10% of what the eligible projects are.
35,000.
We got roughly $35,000, and I just added up. If you carve out the 45 that's required for housing, we got about 123.
Yeah, so we have about 10%, 1/4 of it.
Marcela, can you remind us, please, on, where you have the requests that were made by individual programs, what they each received last year?
As part of your council report, we did include in there a handout that shows what each agency has received. Let me refer to it here. The public services accomplishment slide for you. would basically be this one. I didn't give you a handout, but it should be part of your packet, which has what each agency has received.
Okay.
If you
Can
look
do you have those
electronically.
numbers with you, in front of you? Can you
Yes,
give
I
it to
do.
me? Okay,
Yes, I
so
do.
What did Women Haven Transitional Shelters receive last year?
Well, actually, Women Haven received funding for two separate programs. They received, under their emergency shelter, this current year, which is the 2014, which is the one that we're getting ready to end June 30th of 2015, they received $9,755 for their emergency shelter.
Okay.
For their transitional housing program, they received in 2014 were allocated $4,523.
Okay. How about Catholic Charities?
For the House of Hope, this current year, 2014, they received $2,586.
Okay.
The Senior Nutrition Program received $10,078.
Okay.
And then the Child Abuse Prevention Council received $19,275. You'll see that some of those there's new agencies there that submitted a proposal, which is the Sister Evelyn, and then also the California Rural Legal Assistance.
Which has been pulled out.
That's right, correct. And IVROP also pulled out there.
Okay, and El Centro Fire Department Community Emergency?
Yeah.
They
That's
obviously
a
did
new-
not get anything last year, but they're requesting.
No, they did receive about
We did?
13,000, I'm going based off of memory, for the purchase of defibrillators to install in different city facilities within targeted areas.
Do you know how much that was, you recall?
Roughly about 13,000 or so.
Thank you. Any comments from, any questions or comments for Ms. Piedra before we allow for public testimony? Okay, I don't see any, so I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Members of the public that wish to speak to the council?
My name is Dr. Robert Moser. I'm the Deputy Director for Catholic Charities, and after sitting through this entire meeting, I don't envy you. Not a boring meeting by any means, for sure. I've spoken to this council each year since 2005, and most recently in early December, about the importance and the impact that funding for senior nutrition program has, especially for home-delivered meals for homebound and frail seniors. I shared statistics and success stories experienced over the last 5 years. At that session, each of you expressed your support for the work that we do and how we keep those homebound seniors fed, healthy, and independent. Once again, clearly as this data shows, you're faced with a very difficult decision regarding who receives funding and how much. From my experience, this council is both a caring and courageous body that always does its best to do what is best for the citizens of this city. In the spirit of Council Member Sanders' opening prayer that asked for God's blessing on the hungry and the homeless, I simply ask that you answer that prayer with an action that grants a blessing upon very vulnerable seniors, with an answer to their prayer, give us this day our daily bread. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional comments from anybody?
Maybe we should just bring our tape recorder and replay what we played last year. Thank you so much. I'm Martha Ransom, Catholic Charities. Our pitch for the House of Hope is, as we come every year, we really appreciate being partners with the city on many fronts. So we just had the experience with Mr. Cardenas and the CASA organization of taking in a family that he recommended and tried to work with that very difficult situation. We've had lots of those relationships, and I think they're really key to helping homeless women and children get out of homelessness. Last year we served 118 people, 62 of them were families. Half of them got into permanent housing as a result of being at the house, and we hope to increase that number. So we can only just keep encouraging the great work that we're jointly doing. And I agree with Dr. Moser. Thank you so much for your courageous decision-making that you have to do. And this has been a very interesting meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good evening. I'm Gina Vargas, Executive Director for Center for Family Solutions. I'm here also once again, as I was last year, but I would like to thank you guys for the monies that you did give Women Haven and have been supporting us with the slide that Marcela showed earlier in the year. There has been a tremendous support from the City of El Centro, and really want to applaud the City of El Centro for doing that. Our hope is that other cities would also join those efforts to be able to do that. But right now, we really appreciate the support that we receive from the City of El Centro. Just recently, we submitted a report of those individuals that have been helped with the monies that you provided for this fiscal year, and we've had 140 individuals come through our emergency shelter. That's a lot of women and children coming through. You know, you've also showed the report earlier about the homeless that are actually on the streets, but the homeless that we serve are the ones that are in our shelters. And we've actually put some people in motels when we've had money for it, and just placing them there doesn't help them. It helps them have a warm night place to sleep, but doesn't help them with everything that they need, from transportation to full case management, teaching them how to get to the Department of Social Services. 90% of the women that we serve don't have transportation. Their kids are not in school, and so we provide getting them registered for school. So we do more than just a Band-Aid with your money, and I want to thank you and want you to know that it's just not giving them a warm place to sleep, but we make sure that their kids are going to school, their emotional health is taken care of, and that we're getting them stability in their age, so hopefully they don't become chronically homeless and end up in our shelter for a second and third time. So thank you for the decisions that you guys have to make, and for you guys to know that the money is well spent, every penny of it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Go ahead.
I always get nervous in front of microphones. My name is Karen White. I'm the Executive Director for the Sister Evelyn Morey Center. And while the center has been around for many years, we've put a strong focus in the past 2 years on homelessness prevention. The services that we provide is more of a wraparound style and covering some of the emergency services and the needs that the community has. And with that, we add on the educational component that helps educate families and individuals in different areas, like job needs, computer literacy classes, and ESL classes and citizenship classes. A lot of that is really to help them learn that they can grow and develop themselves to becoming strong community members. I feel funny looking at you guys, I'm sorry. And so...
You're among friends, Karen.
I know. I just don't like talking in public. And so, as a newbie on the block in terms of this funding, we just want to implore with you to support the Sister Evelyn Morey Center and your funding opportunity. But without that, we know that we have your support in so many other ways. We also appreciate the support that we get from the community with the partnerships that we've developed over the past years, even prior to my existence at the center. And then, of course, with our local college and the adult education that brings those services to our center. We really take a lot of pride in the idea of bringing access to education and resources to the families in that community, and the whole community of El Centro as well. So just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Okay, anybody else wishes to provide input, comments? Okay, I'll bring it back to council. I know it's a very difficult item also that we're considering. I don't know if anybody has initial thoughts.
I think that it's the same thing that we talk about every year, that what are the most basic of needs that we need to provide to people, and one of those is something we can't put a price tag on, which is hope. But we also need to be very mindful of how do we give people hope while still addressing their most basic needs, and in my mind, those have to be food and shelter. And so for that reason, I think that I would like to have the council consider some allocation among the Women Haven requests for transitional shelter, both the transitional and the emergency, as well as the House of Hope and the Senior Nutrition Program, recognizing that we have a whopping total of 35,843. So some allocation among those.
I would concur with that. That's the note that I have made for myself as well, in that we value education, we value services provided to our community, but, there's just not enough funding to go around and be able to satisfy all these needs, and that we need to concentrate on the most urgent needs in our community, which is housing and food. So I would concur, Ms. Walker, with your recommendation.
When you say
Sanders?
yes, when I hear the word set aside a certain amount, I'm wondering at which level. Are we talking 10,000, 5,000? I'd like to see for the food, Catholic Charities and House of Hope, something in the category of 10. I know that may.
How about this for a recommendation? How about if we match last year's funding, and then whatever the differential is that's left over, because there'll be a little bit more.
8 or 9.
That we do an allocation based on just a percentage allocation. So you just divide whatever the other among those four.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
I
could give a recommendation based on numbers. I too agree that we, with the presentation we had this morning, it seems like this morning, with the homeless issues that we are facing, obviously, senior nutrition is something that I think we all feel is a great need in our community. I looked at the two Women Haven and Catholic Charities, 75, 75, 75, and 12.5 for those four, which comes out to 35,000. I know there's a little bit of change there. I don't know what exactly that was, but it's 35 and change. But if we did 75 for the traditional shelter, 75 for the emergency shelter, 75 for the women and children at House and Hope, and 12.5 for the senior nutrition, which is a little bit of a bump on the senior nutrition, which I think is a very needed bump for their cause, that would put us at 35,000.
Let me ask Women Haven and Catholic Charities. So if you were able to bump your allocation next year as opposed to this year, where would you like to see that happen within Women Haven? Is it on the transitional shelters, or is it on the emergency shelters? And with Catholic Charities, is it between the shelter for women and children or the senior nutrition program? Now when I put you on the hot seat. Yeah, I know.
Solomon.
He has wisdom.
I think in the context of 12,005, if we did 12,000 for senior nutrition, 8,000 for the
And Women Haven, same question. If you were to get an allocation, an increased allocation compared to last year, where would you like to see it go? Emergency shelter. So that would give us.
But Ms. Vargas, I guess the question is, would you want we're proposing an allocation of roughly $15,000. So would you like to see all of that program to the emergency shelter, or an allocation split between transitional and the emergency shelter, with the larger proportion of that amount going to the emergency shelter?
Larger proportion going into the emergency coming in, and we've had
So
like
if we
a
go 10
and
10
5.
for the emergency shelter and 5 for transitional shelter, 5 in the whatever changes left over, that would work, I mean, that would at least help. I know you need more, but
How about it for that, whatever changes left over goes to the emergency shelter under woman hand?
sure, that's fine.
Yeah.
That leaves us nothing for the Sister Evelyn Morris.
Yeah, and, you know, and I just want
And I think we should put something there. They
to,
also-
I agree with Councilmember Sanders, and I know it's tough, but, you know, we're only really treating the symptom and not really kind of getting on the front end of this part, which is the public education part. And one thing that I really appreciated about House of Hope is that when they did take in this family, there was parenting classes involved. There was you know, some empowerment opportunities for the family and strategies to make them independent. And that's what I really enjoyed and have personal testimony on the services of House of Hope. But I do want the council to be mindful that, you know, public service and public education is a big component of this. And, you know, maybe looking at, you know, the Sister Evelyn Center as an opportunity, an organization that's placed in a very difficult area, that's very resourceful. Maybe we look at seeing what they can do with the funding opportunity. I know that they've been around for a while, but you know, I am a big fan of public education, public service, and treating this on the front end as opposed to treating the symptom. But I know these decisions are tough. But
I would agree with you, Mr. Cardenas, in concept. However, you know, just using Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, we got to deal with the foundational needs of our citizens. And if we had more money as we did a year ago, absolutely. I'm a total advocate of educational programs and a total advocate of the Child Abuse Prevention Council, as well as the Sister Evelyn Murray Center, and I know what the good work that they do. But if we allocate any resources to them, it's going to be at the expense of the shelter and the senior nutrition programs. And you know, as much as I love the other programs, I can't do that at this point in time.
Yeah, I would agree. I just, it's unfortunate. I think we all wish we had more money. The problem is moving, and I'm sure that, I know that they do good work, and so does Child Abuse Prevention Council. They all do good work.
Our fire department, we're nipping out our fire department.
Yeah, as they're sitting. But you know, the problem is education is fine, but if a person doesn't have food and shelter, you know, what do you do with that situation? And I've heard stories, in fact, we've all heard stories of the work that Catholic Charities does with the seniors. And I mean, sometimes they're the only person that gets seen is by the people delivering their one meal a day. And it affected me last year when I knew you guys had to cut services. Actually, I mean, you think we have a tough job. I mean, whoever sat down and had to take people off the list that didn't get food, I'd sooner be sitting up here today than sitting in that spot, that what they had to do. So I wish we had more money, but I feel like the money that we have, what little we have, needs to go to food and shelter.
But I don't think I heard from Sister Evelyn Morey Center that they do not provide food and shelter. I didn't hear that. They said they didn't do that. One of their components also includes education. So I think that as we look at this from a holistic view, this is their first time in coming before us. And this is not to take away anything from everybody else, but when the need is so great, what is it? To do a biblical term, the harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. And so how do we meet the need? We have to believe that there is some opportunity to feed the multitude. We have to believe that. How we go about dividing that, I don't know. Maybe we'll bless it, and then that'll help. There has to be something. So as we look at this, maybe we should have the young lady come back again, or unless I misunderstood her. I thought she said they also provide food and shelter for individuals, or did you say just an education component, so that I don't misquote you?
Thank you for No, actually, we do. Our emergency services programs include the emergency food and shelter program. We also have our emergency food pantry, where we actually do feed a number of families, where we provide food for them to put food on the table. We have families that come in. We see at least 2 to 3 families every other day as scheduled to provide them food for their household. We also are a USDA for the food bank.
So you leverage some of whatever you get through either donations, contributions, or with other agencies.
Exactly.
To provide this food. And I noticed your requested amount was $15,000. Is that correct? That's the requested amount. You understand now that that request will not be fulfilled. And I'm not sure if I'm going to persuade my colleagues to even put in $5,000 or consider $5,000, but I would like to see that they would give that some thought.
Most of the participants of our educational program.
Karen, I'm gonna hate to put you on the spot, Karen, but can you come over here to the mic? Because I don't know that your voice is being picked up by our microphone.
Most of our participants of our education program come through our emergency services programs. So our job is to, as they're coming in for an emergency need, our job is to stabilize the home through the emergency services that we have. In addition to that, as we identify some of their needs, some of the folks that come through our programs, our emergency service program, they can't get a job because they don't have basic English skills or basic computer skills. So we link them to those additional classes to get those skills so that they can find jobs, and then we refer them on to other programs for additional services.
Let's not use that education component. I want to just focus, if you will, yes, because the need now is how do we go about providing the basic need? If we use Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food and shelter, clothing. So,
and we provide them the food. We provide rent and utility assistance for those who are facing shut-off notices and evictions, and we also provide emergency clothing.
Although this specific request was for classes, correct?
Classes, it was,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, I think that you've answered that, and while I'm pleading for something, I don't think, Karen, we're going to be able to do it this year. I would encourage you to apply next year.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I would encourage you to apply next year.
Thank
and
you.
then try to narrow your request on something other than this education component, if you would.
Sure.
I agree. I think, because knowing that, this need's not going to go away, and we're still going to have more homeless. We're going to unfortunately have more hungry and unsheltered people. And if you concentrate on that component, as hard as it is, it makes it easier for us to try to allocate some funding for that, because I think that that's where our biggest need is at this point.
I'm ready to put forward a motion for
Please.
consideration. $5,000 transitional shelter services for Woman Haven, $10,843 Woman Haven Emergency Shelter, Catholic Charities House of Hope, $8,000, Catholic Charities Senior Nutrition Program, $12,000, and the funding for the other components as reviewed by staff to be funded out of the other components.
And if I may add, so the residual would go to the sidewalk program. Residual after the graffiti, the housing elements, am I correct?
Basically, from the remaining funds, what can be considered is the sidewalk improvements, the code enforcement, and the housing activities. When you combine those requests, obviously it exceeds what's available. My only question would be, is there a specific preference, as we are prioritizing needs, if there's a specific preference as to how you would like to see the remaining funds distributed based upon these activities?
Mayor and Council, my recommendation to you is that you fund those are the housing programs, the lead base, the housing
Up to
elements,
130.
and that after those are funded, the residual amount of approximately $180,000, $140,000 goes into the sidewalk program.
Okay, so in addition to this, the public service component, I'd move staff's recommendation with regard to the
The code enforcement, all of those.
housing activities and code enforcement program with the residual to sidewalk improvements.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we get the button to move that? Okay, so moved by Walker, second by Jackson, please ballot. Okay, passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
All righty, we have a need to add an item on to the agenda. That's the resolution establishing the compensation and employment terms for the position of Assistant Director of Community Development. Is there a motion to add the item?
So move.
Moved by Walker, second by Jackson, please ballot. Thank you. Item passes 5-0. The item before us is a resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro establishing the compensation and employment terms for the position of Assistant Director for Community Development. We had a full discussion on this in closed session in regards to the terms of the contract. So motion by Jackson, second by Walker, please ballot. Motion pat,
Well, let me try again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Silva, we need your vote.
We're all looking at
I had pushed the button. The motion passes 5-0. Okay,
Congratulations, Frank.
Yay!
Am I missing anything from the agenda that I can see? No?
I don't think so.
Okay, nothing on successor housing agency? Nothing on successor agency to the redevelopment agency? Any additional public comments? I don't have any more slips. Any member of the public that wishes to provide comments? None? Okay, we'll combine our task force and council reports. We'll start with Mr. Sanders.
Mr. Mayor, I have nothing. Our meeting for ICTC will be next week. And of course, hospital board meeting is next week. And I'm no longer part of the prison task force.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Mr. Jackson?
Just that Thursday, 9 a.m., we have the renaming of the field for Kiwanis Field. The sign was installed this morning, and so it's up, and it looks really good, and look forward to seeing everybody out there at 9 o'clock on Thursday.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
Well, I think a whole bunch of us were at the air show gala.
Yeah?
Out at the NEF Centro, which was a lovely event. I had an opportunity earlier in the month to travel to Los Angeles for some SCAG-related events, including a UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs presentation on Los Angeles County challenges and opportunities. It included a presentation by Governor Brown's Office of Economic Development Director, Kish Rajan. It was a very interesting presentation. Attended the State of the County address, I believe.
I was there too.
Several of us were there for that. And that would be it.
Being crowned.
I'll mention that. Mr. Cardenas?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just real briefly, I attended the back end of the Parks and Recs Commission meeting. Marcella's group and department down there collects some very interesting data as far as the usage of our sports complex. And just in the month of January alone, we had over 2,100 people visit that sports complex.
Wow,
The
nice.
interesting thing of it is that 1,239 of those folks are adults. So there's several adults that are paying $2 to attend our sports complex. Pretty impressive data that's being collected on the part of Ms. Marcella, and I appreciate that. And so we had about 942 children in the month of January, 1,239 adults. So about 2181 people visiting that facility. So I appreciate the collection of the data. Just real briefly, and I don't want to steal the thunder of our mayor, but we did go to Mexicali and meet with the tourism folks down in Mexicali. These folks are very eager to do business with us. And I'm very excited about the initiative on the part of our mayor in improving that relationship and addressing that. And I want to thank him for inviting me to Mexicali to meet with those folks, looking at a sister agreement, probably a sisterhood agreement. And again, just grateful that our mayor is following up on that and making some quick progress on that. So that's all, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. I too went to the State of the County address. Very nice. Karen Kelly did an excellent job. The Navy Gala, you know, surprisingly, because I've been going to the Navy Gala for a number of years, and every year I have to wear a double coat and gloves and a scarf, and this time it was like shorts weather. It's incredible. I'd like to congratulate the Calexico Mardi Gras.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Funny.
go figure.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit of that experience, Mr. Guy. I hate to put you on the spot.
Oh, man. You know, it was a lot of fun. You know, Calexico, they tend to like to party down there. So it was a big party, and Darletta Willis and Mark Willis came in second. So El Centro took first and second out of the 6 candidates, and it was a really nice night. It was interesting to see how other cities and other chambers do things, and Calexico is definitely unique in how they do things. So it was fun though, and I'm gonna enjoy. Sandra and I will enjoy being the king and queen for this coming year. So.
And I look at the council at our Mardi Gras parade on Saturday. I was reminded to remind the council, those of you that will be attending the SCAG conference in May.
That's right.
To see our colleague Cheryl Walker become the next SCAG president. You need to notify the city clerk's office so that they can make the appropriate travel reservations for all of us. I know I've already signed up.
Yay.
May 2nd, right?
May 7th.
7th?
7th and 8th, as I recall. If you remember, in public comments at the last council meeting, we had Mr. Johnny Hernandez come to the podium and express some concerns over vandalism and other activities going on, particularly on the east side of town. Our chief, Mr. Madueño, and I met with Mr. Hernandez, and his most prevalent issue, I guess, is copper theft. He's claiming that that's an activity that is really hurting the east side of town particularly, and you know, the homes being vandalized and the copper being stolen, and it's kind of become a hub of activities because of all the recycling businesses around the area, and I don't know that we have a resolution to that. It's kind of like the homeless task force. I think it's not just a city of El Centro problem, it's a regional problem. So Mr. Hernandez sent me some material that he found what other cities may be doing in terms of being able to deal with this problem. It was really eye-opening for me because Mr. Madueño shared some of the restrictions that they have, both in terms of personnel and but also legally. It's really difficult to go after the people that steal the copper because of legal circumstances and our inability to take a more legal action against individuals that we know are taking the copper. So I don't know whether other cities, Mr. Duran, if you can bring this up at the next city manager's office, are looking at this, and perhaps we can come up with some kind of regional approach.
There is a general frustration because even in Ms. Piedra and I, when we sat with other businesses and have talked to them, I think some of you were at those meetings, even when they're caught, it's such a small amount that it doesn't get prosecuted because of the volume of activity going on at the DA's office. So we wind up with, well, prove that it's where the copper came from. Well, the guy said, I followed him. It's still, so some of you have been at meetings where we've talked to the owners on this thing. And by the way, we've been victims, the city, of that same issue. But it is more than regional, it's a national issue. The theft of copper runs on both sides of the border. It's a real problem, and I think we'll continue to deal with this. And that's where we're at on that.
But can you bring that up as a,
Oh, yes.
I don't know if there's
Absolutely.
some interest in some kind of regional approach to
Yes.
this or some
And I guess
way?
I would ask, the chiefs also meet, and perhaps because we all meet as in our respective professions, is that also become an item?
Yeah, thank you.
Mayor, before you go back, also a reminder, at the same time as the Mardi Gras is the Benevolent Association of the Chinese Businessmen of the New Year's, and so I'll cover that. I'll be attending. I don't know if any of you are going to also attend. We had a number of invitations come in, so I know we're going to be well covered at the parade. So, but I'll be on the next block over.
Okay. All right.
That's, that's
Are you
Saturday.
joining? Oh, Ms. Sanders is going to be joining us.
As Mr. Cardenas indicated, him and I, along with Les Smith from the Chamber, visited with Cotuco, which is like a tourist commission organization. And it was very interesting. We met with their executive director and another employee there. And, you know, what I've mentioned before and the suspicions that I had were confirmed. They said Mexicali views El Centro as being the mall and Costco, and that's it. There's nothing else in El Centro, according to most Mexicali residents.
In and out?
We
don't even have
That's
In and
what
Out?
they said Costco and the mall.
Yeah.
That's it.
They utilize our parks quite.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's maybe the general perception. So I think our initiative to kind of develop a closer relationship, they have a travel show that they've done in other communities. They call it Mexicali Expo, which they're about to do that in Coachella. They're about to sign a sister city agreement with the city of Coachella. They're going to be doing a Mexicali Expo. Coachella will do a Coachella Expo in Mexicali. So we're going to work through the logistics of that, hopefully. They are the place to start for a sister city agreement. So just today, Mr. Cardenas and I received a sample letter that's the trigger to begin the discussions and process for a sister city agreement. That will take several months to do because they have to get permission and authorization from Mexico City to be able to do that. It's a very structured protocol that they have to follow. So then anyways, that's moving forward. I asked Mr. Duran that if possible by the second meeting in March, the March 17th meeting, I will make a report to the council on the 3 initiatives that I mentioned in the state of the city and kind of create a timeline, how we're going to accomplish all 3 of them for the council's approval and review. So it was a very interesting meeting. We had a nice lunch afterwards, and very beneficial, I think. And they're very interested in doing this. They're very interested in doing a Mexicali Expo in El Centro, and they're interested in us having, in essence, an El Centro Expo as part of their county fair or city fair in mid-October, late October. And so we'll be working with staff, because I don't know that we're ready for that yet. We don't have the marketing material and things to let Mexicali know that we're not just the mall and Costco. They were much more than that. So I'll be working with staff and present to the council some ideas that we have for that. So,
Mr. Mayor, maybe we might consider speaking with Ms. Piedra and Deborah Harrell regarding our upcoming Imagine Award and invite someone over just to sit in on that Imagine
that would be a
Award.
wonderful idea. Thank you, Ms. Sanders.
Have space for at least 2 more.
And it looks like it looks like my travel plans to San Francisco for that day is canceled, so I might be able to be there for the Imagine Awards. All right, anything else?
No.
Long meeting?
You were supposed to be done 2 hours ago.
I know. Thank you very much. So,
All right. Man, that was just emotionally draining.